Welcome to the Jon Harrison podcast. Statistics show us that about 70% of people are disengaged in the workplace. Obviously, that affects bottom lines of companies, individual, their own engagement at work, but also affects families and communities. We don't want to just be frustrated about things that are going on in the workplace or in the world. We want to do something about it. So we're going to talk about this while others aren't, and we hope you will join us on this journey.
Welcome back to the Jon Harrison podcast. This is Madeline, and I've got Jon and Christy and Melissa here with us today. And we're going to be talking about, this whole month, we're going to be talking about valuing diverse people and perspectives. But today we're going to specifically talk about why diverse perspectives makes teams stronger and not harder to manage, because I think some people do view like, oh, if I have all these different people with all these different viewpoints who come from all these different backgrounds, they're gonna change up things, it's gonna be harder, it's gonna be harder to manage. And we actually found a statistics from the Harvard Business Review, and it says teams with diverse viewpoints make better decisions 87% of the time. So I know that's just one statistic, but we all have experience with this that we can talk on. So Jon, I'll let it go to you first.
Madeline hit the nail on the head pretty quickly here, which I like, is we would think, man, if everyone was just me at work, our meetings would be so efficient because we'd all think the same and we all have the same technical skills and we all have the same background. We could get these meetings done in 5 minutes. So I would say there's no doubt having diverse people around your table, however you define diversity, is going to make the meetings take longer. But I think there's value in that they take longer. And I think about it in terms just of, those of you, right, when we were growing up, I'm guessing your mom and dad didn't handle things the same way, right? They were wired differently, not just male, female, but just their personalities. And, we could say, well, women were, they were designed to be more nurturing and men, well, I don't know, that we can debate all that, but there's no doubt even in when you're being raised, there's differences, and I think those differences usually will help people become better adults in the long run. So innovation is a very sexy word today. Most companies have it on the wall, or they want it on the wall. Man, we want to be innovative and be on the leading edge of technology and new thought processes. Well, that means you're going to have meetings that take longer, and you're going to have people in the room that you might not even think should be in the room for this discussion. So we were joking about, this is probably my age showing, but the phrase bean counter, because Madeline and Christy,
I don't know what that
they're
means.
like, we don't know what that means. Okay.
First time hearing it.
Okay. But bean counters are generally accounting people, money people. And certainly at Caterpillar, you would hear, well, we don't want them in the room because they'll just, poo-poo all of our ideas, and they're always, And then on the flip side, we've said, well, we don't want the creative people in the room because they're so dreamy and often, outer space, and we've got to get stuff done. But to me, that's just an example of even within organizations, departments, and people's tasks that they're responsible for, we would think they don't need to be in the room. Now, I'm not saying for every decision you have every department around the table and all that, but it's just a topic that I think we brush over pretty quickly, that say we want innovation, but how do we get that? And obviously, again, diversity can be race and gender and personality types, which we talk a lot about in our sessions, but it's really thought processes, technical skills coming from different industries. So what are some thoughts on that, Melissa, anybody else in the room, on where you've seen this play out well?
Yeah, so early on in my career, I had someone that was both a leader and a mentor to me. And one of the things that she suggested to me was that 3 heads are always better than 1. And so I really just kind of got into that rhythm of realizing that and bouncing things off of people. And a lot of times it was one-on-one, but I was never afraid to invite that different perspective into the room for a conversation, because they truly had a different background or a context in which they were pulling information from, or it may have been a different industry. So I don't know, I just early on in my career, I learned to embrace that. And I know it's not as easy for some people to do it, but it also kind of saves your brain power, right? Because I can do all kinds of research, but that could take me days to come up with different ideas, perhaps.
Yeah, and I don't know if we want to go this direction, but I'd love to hear from y'all about how I think you're going down this path, Melissa, of how do you manage different perspectives in a room without there being chaos? Because I think we usually do think of like, if you're disagreeing with somebody, that feels chaotic and kind of confrontational, but it doesn't always have to be that way. It can be really beneficial to the team and can be seen as an asset if you do have differing viewpoints, and hopefully you can find a common ground. So let's say you're in a meeting like that, you've got a couple disagreements. How can you make sure that there's not a heated conversation?
A couple of things. So first, kind of setting the expectations on the front end. You know, we're here, this is a safe place, we're going to discuss X, and we want to hear everybody's point of view. And then saying, we may not all agree, and that's okay. We want to hear different perspectives. We want to be respectful, right? All the time, but we want to empower you to tell us what it is you're thinking, because the flip side of that is you have a lot of people that are invited into the room but never feel comfortable sharing their thoughts. So you want to make sure not only am I giving you a seat at the table, but I may have to call out and say, Madeline, tell me what you think about this, because you may be a little, let's be honest, intimidated in some of those rooms, especially if you're not in agreement with what's being said and you've already had 3 people, as we say, co-sign that idea, and you're sitting in your seat going, I don't think this is going to work, or I think there's a better way to do it. So we have to be intentional to make sure that people feel safe to voice those opinions, even if they're not popular and they're not what we would think or how we would run the idea of the organization. So making sure that there's a safe space for people to talk, and that has to happen before you go into the room, and it has to be said before the meeting starts, that we really do value your opinion. And then after the meeting, you have to make sure there's no retaliation, because sometimes we'll say that, we'll get people to open up, and then we have the water cooler chatter. Well, so-and-so said this, and that was a horrible idea, and da-da-da-da-da. So we have to make sure we're living up to those standards that we're saying we want. And if we truly want innovation, sometimes that's going to come with a little bit of conflict, because those discussions sometimes get heated, and that's okay. They can still be respectful. We can agree to disagree.
I'll add too to that safe space comment, Christy, that sometimes the people you're inviting to the room or the conversation have their core competency in whatever their skill set is, but they may have never worked on an integration project, or they may have never worked on an upgrade of a particular system. And so you're asking a creative to come in, or you're asking a finance and accounting person to come in to an HRIS system implementation, which your company has never had before. And they're like, what does this have to do with me? I'm an accounting person, or I'm a creative person. So that safe space, I think, would extend to different core competencies of the individuals in the room.
I totally agree. We're in the process of an HRS system, and what we had to get people to see is this is going to impact you, because it impacts payroll. So everybody at the utility is involved in payroll. I think people understanding the why, and why it's important for me to understand this system, the ease of this system, the buy-in. So having that buy-in so people know. But totally agree.
You know, one thing we talk about in our sessions is if just putting the word media in a big umbrella, and again, doesn't matter if it's far right, far left, or somewhere in the middle, media loves conflict. They love anger. I joke about this because I'm a sports fan, but we don't need, in my opinion, any more sports talk shows where it's 2 people that yell at each other about sports. Like they'll go, here's our 10 topics today, and then they go, and then they all yell. And I'm like, this is so silly to me. Like, it's just sports, for gosh sakes. Anyway, I think, not to get over dramatic here, but how your organization handles different thought processes is really important, because especially younger people they've just grown up, so to speak, with yelling. And you're an idiot. And, you know, instead of going, can we actually have a discussion about this? And even the people around this table, we're going to disagree with things, but I think we have a heart for each other. So Christy and I could disagree about something, but she's going, well, I know Jon's heart. And so that may seem like an odd thing that he just asked me or said, but I'm not going to get offended by that. I'm going to go, let's talk about that some more. And I'm not trying to get, super sweet here. I'm saying, is your organization one that's going to allow the accounting and the creative people to have a say about something that they might not think they're part of? And like Melissa just said, some of them are going, why am I coming to this meeting? This has nothing to do with I don't love that response, by the way. And so for you that are at whatever level you are at the organization that are listening to this podcast, if you get invited in for something like that, you should be open to that, be respectful about it, and not go, I have nothing to say in this meeting. So I think it's, again, a two-way street for some of these things. But we all want innovation. We all want new ideas. But that's not going to come from a table of people that are just like you. And so we're going to have some future episodes here that are going to dig into this a little bit further. But I think we miss the fact sometimes that I think there's legal aspects to these things, of course. EEOC and things like that. That's critical. That's not usually the angle we talk about in our times together with people because we don't have a lot of time. We're trying to come at it from the beauty that comes from different thought processes around the table. It improves employee engagement, but I think your customers benefit too by having people from different backgrounds and perspectives and thought processes. So we'll dig into this a little further in future episodes, but just try to get your brains around the fact that this isn't always something that should feel forced. It shouldn't feel like the government's making us do blah, blah, blah. Let's have different folks around the table and see what comes from that. And just like we said, I look back as one of 7 children. I had 6 siblings around me who were all very different, and I learned a lot from all of them. I learned some of them not to do things they were doing, but that's okay. But even that, like I felt like I had 8 parents around me, so to speak. And I, to this day, at 60 years old, know I was shaped by these different perspectives, even in our home. So I think we can extrapolate that to the workplace at times as well.
Yeah, that's such a great way to kind of have a simple illustration of, if you have siblings, that your siblings are different than you. So like if you grew up with the same parents or under the same household or some sort of, similar situation, you're still going to be so different. And so let's just value those differences. And like Jon said, we're going to have some future episodes about this topic. So coming up next, we'll be talking about more of this. So we will catch you on that next one.
Thank you for joining us today on the Jon Harrison podcast. As you know, we believe that a positive work culture creates a ripple effect that extends into families and communities. If you found anything of value in today's episode, please share it with somebody so they can hear it as well. And if you have questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, please fill out the form below.